And there you have it. I'm telling you guys, you're not gonna believe that this is a gluten-free noodle.
Hi, it's Mandy from Lady and Pups. Today I'm going to be talking about gluten-free noodles. Hold up, don't leave yet. I'm going to be talking about gluten-free noodle not in the sense that it's made of gluten-free flour, but I'm going to be talking about an alternative gluten-free noodle that is made of protein. And when I say protein, I meant meat. I know that sounds so strange, but just listen. So this is a noodle that is not only gluten-free, but low carbs because it's made predominantly with specifically lean pork or chicken breast or lean beef. And today I'm going to be using pork. So let me show you how, and I promise you that it will change your mind about gluten-free noodles. So the noodle is not just made of pure meat, of course. It's made of meat and starch. And specifically, I'm using a combination of tapioca starch and cornstarch. And here I have a bowl of tapioca starch. And the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to pour 1/4 cup of boiling water, okay, into the tapioca starch. And what's that gonna do is it's gonna partially cook it. And because remember, for any gluten-free dough, if you have worked with any before, you would notice that it doesn't come together quite as a wheat flour dough because it doesn't have gluten to hold it together. The hot water, boiling water, and pre-cooking the tapioca does is that it provides some level of stickiness that helps holding the dough together without it being too fragile that it breaks very easily. So now that I have this, it's gonna come together into kind of like a lumpy form. It's okay, don't forget about trying to make it smooth or anything. Now I'm going to have 1/2 cup of cornstarch on the side, okay? The reason why that I'm not adding it into here is because cornstarch cooks at a much higher temperature and is not going to get cooked just by pouring boiling water inside. So I'm gonna have it on this side. Now let's talk about the meat part of this recipe. The idea of this recipe actually came from a wonton wrapper that is quite a regional street food in some parts of southern China, and it's called yanpi. So somebody probably came up with the idea of using meat and tapioca flour to create a much chewier or bouncier dough, even if it's rolled super thin. So you can use, in terms of protein, I have a lean pork here. It's very important that you use completely lean protein. So lean pork, chicken breast, or lean beef will all work. I haven't tried beef yet, but I personally prefer pork because I think it's more flavorful than chicken breast, but you can use chicken breast too. So when you buy, when we have a piece of lean pork, you will notice that even if it's lean without any fat and bones, sometimes it comes with like a silver skin or some kind of a tissue on the surface of the meat. That's when you want to cut away those. Okay, so because they're not gonna blend too properly in the food processor, and it's going to make the cutting of the noodle later on a little difficult because of all these connective tissues. So I'm just going to remove that, and I'm simply going to cut, doesn't matter, just big small pieces. It doesn't really matter if they're uniform or not because they are going to be pureed in the food processor. So you'll need 200 grams, okay? So now the pork is in the food processor. I'm just gonna add a 1/4 teaspoon of salt. And then we're going to basically puree the meat, okay? Not just grinding it or like turn them into chunks. And I'm gonna show you what it's gonna look like. The
pork has essentially been in the food processor running for about 2 minutes, and you really want to break it down. So now that once you have this, I'm gonna add all of the pre-cooked tapioca starch, okay, and 2/3 of the cornstarch. I'm gonna pulse. Now, once it's kind of come together, I'm just gonna kind of touch it with my finger and see if it's sticking to your finger like that, too much, okay? Then add the rest of the cornstarch, okay? And I'm gonna show you what the right consistency is. What you're looking for is something like this, okay? It's gonna feel quite bouncy, okay? And it's gonna feel very moist, okay? But not overly sticky, okay? It's still sticking quite a little bit, but it's okay. You're gonna want it to, you know, when you tap it, it just kind of, you know, leaves a tiny bit on your finger, okay? And that's when you're gonna turn this into the working surface and start kneading.
When I said knead, I don't actually mean it like, you know, you knead it like a pasta dough. You're really just going to apply some flour, more tapioca flour, and I'm just gonna give it like a couple, you know, like twists and turns, so that just to make sure that the whole dough is smooth and even, and then I'm going to roll it out. At this point, you actually use this dough like a pasta dough, but it's really important that the only thing that you cannot do is that you cannot pass this dough through a pasta machine, okay? So it's gluten-free dough. It doesn't have anything to hold it together, and it's sticky. And when you pass it through the pasta machine, it's only gonna get caught in the machine. You can use your hand to form them into gnocchi shape or any chubby pasta shapes or anything like that. But today I'm going to show you how to make them into fettuccine shapes, okay? So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to basically try to pat the dough down into like a rectangle, okay? So, you know, it's easier for me to roll it out, okay? And it's really important that you keep this dough super well floured with tapioca starch. We are going to start rolling this out. Like I said, every time you roll, flip it over and then make sure that the front and the back is very well floured. Go slowly. Seriously, no one is in a hurry here. Go slowly, don't panic, which is what I'm telling myself right now. It's okay. Take your time. And then if you see a tear, just like, you know, shape it back together, no big deal. And then just roll it out slowly, okay? Don't try to, like, you know, give it like a big push every single time you roll. Just try to be ginger with it, okay? So once you have it at the thickness that you want, and then you're going to, just like cutting noodles, right? I mean, if you have ever made fettuccine at home before, basically what you're going to do is folding it like that, so that this length is about the length of your knife. And here I have a very long knife, okay? But if your knife is not long enough, you have to fold it again, okay? So I just have to do one fold, and that's enough for me. Now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna gently transfer this onto a cutting board, because I don't want to damage my knife, especially if your countertop is a stone countertop. You want to transfer that onto a cutting board, okay? So now I'm gonna first trim off, you know, the ends that are way too irregular, okay? That's, you know, just like any, I do this with wheat flour dough as well, okay? So now with a sharp knife, you're going to cut the noodles. Instead of pressing down, you're gonna slice, okay? Because it is made of protein, pork, and it has some, like,
you know, meat tissues and whatnot. So you want to cut through all that with a clean cut, okay? And instead of dragging it back and forth, just give it like a clean slice in a single direction. And obviously you can cut these noodles as thick, as wide, and as thinly as you want to. But I feel like fettuccine, you know, it's easy. It doesn't, you know, require too much patience. But if you want to do a little bit thinner, that is fine too. Or super thick, that is fine too. You know, like those Xi'an noodles. If you're making any of those like biang biang Xi'an noodle substitute, you can do that. But I'm just going to cut it into a fettuccine thickness, okay? So. And once you have like a few strands of noodle ready on the side, you want to like unfold it gently, okay? And then just put that onto the counter. You know, don't try to like toss it or like, you know, roll it or like crumble it or whatever, okay? This is quite a delicate dough, okay? It cannot withstand any harsh handling, if you will. So I'm just gonna simply unfold like this and then put it on the side so I have more rooms to keep going. Now once you're done with all the slicing and the unfolding, like I said, don't try to like, you know, ruffle them up. Just simply keep it laid flat, sort of. You can stack them, that is fine, okay? But just lay them kind of flat on the table as they are. And then bring a large pot of water to boil with a big hefty pinch of salt, just like as if you're cooking pasta, okay? So as you're boiling, waiting for that big pot of water to boil, here in this pot, I have heavy cream, milk, just a small dollop of Greek yogurt because I like the tang that it brings to the party. Nutmeg, black pepper, and grated Parmesan. And I'm going to just heat it up just a bit so that the cheese is sort of melted and everything sort of incorporated together. But I'm not going to reduce it or anything, okay? I'm just going to basically warm it up. Once it comes to like a slight simmer, I will turn off the heat. And here in this small pot, I have butter and olive oil that is brought to a enthusiastic sizzle, and I'm going to add fresh thyme. Ooh. You actually want to hear, I love the sound of the thyme popping in hot oil because immediately your whole kitchen is gonna smell like fresh thyme. So fresh thyme and grated garlic. I'm going to let that sizzle for just a few seconds and I'm gonna turn off heat. So the water has come to a boil. I'm going to add all the noodles in there all at once, and really importantly, okay, once the noodles are in the water, use a chopstick or wooden spoon or whatever, gently give them a nudge so that they don't stick together, okay? Don't leave them in the water as a ball because they're gonna clump up. And then we're just going to wait for the water to come back to a boil. And these are gonna cook soon, okay? Just like any fresh pasta, they're gonna cook pretty fast. Now, once the noodles have floated to the top, I'm going to transfer them into the pot where the cream is. And it's just like any other pasta recipe. You want the noodles to finish cooking inside the sauce. Once the noodles are cooked, they're not fragile anymore, okay? So because once the starches are cooked, they are basically act just like a wheat flour noodle. It will bind everything together, so you don't have to be too careful with it, okay? So I'm just gonna bring the sauce to a simmer and it's gonna thicken together with the noodle. Now, I'm going to, really importantly, I'm going to season the sauce with fish sauce instead of salt. And that's my secret about making pasta or cream sauce pasta. It works, fish sauce works so much better than salt in a cream sauce situation. It just makes everything taste so much better. And once the all the seasoning is right, you can plate this. Now, once you've plated the pasta, this is when I add the garlic and thyme oil on top. Instead of cooking it into the sauce, I like it like, you know, as a extra layer of elements instead of just everything all binded together. And then every time I take a bite, there is like, you know, thymes and garlic and, you know, that different differentiations and tastes and textures. Last but not least, of course, you want more Parmesan on top. And there you have it. I'm telling you guys, you're not gonna believe that this is a gluten-free noodle. The second that your fork touches this noodle, you know this is a very texturally satisfying noodle, okay? You will have like just a little bit of resistance, you know, pulling it up. And that means it has so much elasticity. So good. I mean, this is such a flavorful noodle. And it's not, nobody's gonna know that it's made of pork or chicken or beef or whatever you choose to use. But it's just a very, very flavorful noodle and has such a wonderful texture that is so similar to actual noodles. It has that chew, that bounce, that bite on your teeth. It's just so good. And it's gluten-free. Not that I'm gluten sensitive, but if you are, I'm telling you, this trumps all other gluten-free noodles that you will ever try, okay? This is literally one of my favorite noodle to make, and that includes wheat noodles. It's not because, you know, I'm not eating this because it's a compromise. It doesn't taste like a compromise. It's just good. Okay, so please give it a try and let me know what you think. And thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.